All right, so 1 Thessalonians 5:22 is where I want to direct your attention. It says, abstain from all appearance of evil. And I don't know why I feel like I need to confess this, but I do a lot. I study a lot for my sermons. I like to bring fresh material, but whenever I re-preach a sermon or reuse an outline, it kind of makes me feel lazy sometimes. And this is one I preached about 9 years ago. But I was thinking about it this week, and I was like, I want to preach on that. And so I went and I referred back to my notes, and I was like, this is all the stuff I was wanting to cover. And I was like, I'm preaching it again. I think pretty much most of the people weren't here when I preached it last time, but I don't know. I just feel like I need to just put it out there that I'm re-preaching an outline. But abstain from all appearance of evil, because this is something we do need to be reminded about, and really how we practice this too sometimes kind of develops it with the changing times. We are living in evil days. Our world is full of evil. We're rarely even shocked anymore by stories and things we hear. There's constantly scandals, from politicians, but even to leaders in churches. And I know for me personally, there's a lot of application I'll probably make throughout the message, even for me personally as a pastor, that there's things where I'm going to be extra careful. There's areas where I think we all need to go above and beyond because of the fact that we live in evil days where there's such a thing as pervert pastors. There's pastors out there who are thieves. There are pastors out there that'll steal church money, and these things happen. And so because of that, we have to put safeguards in place, and there's certain transparency and things that we need to have that, most of us, probably normally don't even think about. We put windows on the rooms, on the doors going into different rooms for a reason. Why? Because we don't want it to even appear like something could be going on. Whatever we could do to just be as transparent as we can, we think is very important because there is evil out there. And we don't want to even appear like there's any evil going on. I get creeped out by Jehovah's Witnesses churches that they don't have any windows on the buildings ever. Is there anything in the Bible says you have to have windows? No. But most buildings have windows, and I want to know why they don't have windows. And there might not be anything that weird, but you know what? All of a sudden I'm creeped out now because we're already suspicious of them anyway. And and think about it too for our church. Okay? Our church, let's just admit it, we get a little more scrutiny than the average church, don't we? And so because of that, because we have a lot more accusations thrown at us, a lot more accusations because of stands and things we take, it's even more important, I think, that we are transparent as a church because people are more likely to be looking for evil here than they are in other churches because people need us to be evil. Because we expose their evil, what do they want to do? They want to be able to turn around and say, well, they're evil too, so therefore they're hypocrites, and everybody hates hypocrites. So, we don't mind just putting it out there, hey, here's what we are, we're as transparent as possible. We don't even want to be mistaken for the type of people that are out there. And so, because there are so many preachers who have done horrible things, we are being watched closer than ever. And as I hear the stories, of a lot of these scandals, I have to admit, I don't always know for sure what to think about the guilt or innocence of a person. But one thing I do know for sure, in many of these cases, individuals failed to protect themselves from the appearance of evil. I've talked about one individual before who I knew who's in prison now for killing his wife. And in reality, from the news story they did on it, it didn't seem like they did a great job proving he did it. But let me tell you, there were things he was doing that appeared evil when it came to a woman that he was traveling with, that he even brought with her when he came here. They had kids too, but it looked bad. It looked really bad. Didn't prove he murdered his wife, but that appearance of evil, I think, probably did more to help get him convicted than just about anything. And so again, let's just face it. In these evil days, with the strong stands we're taking, people are going to try to accuse us of things, and we need to make sure we protect ourselves, and everybody here needs to do the same thing too. And because there's just so much stuff. Isn't it pathetic that like at Walgreens, they got to unlock almost everything these days? Why is that? Because people make meth out of everything, you know? And then now, too, they got to pretty much lock up everything because you got dirtbag, low-life freeloaders that just think they can just go in and throw everything into a bag and walk out of the store. And, you know, that's the day we're living in. But, you know, because the days are evil, you know, and, I mean, just, there's some things you shouldn't do. And if you do these things, they're foolish. If something bad happens to you, it's probably your fault. For example, is it a sin? Are you even likely to hurt anybody if you walk into a bank with a toy gun? You can't hurt anybody with a toy gun, but, you know, because people typically, you know, they rob banks and all that, it's probably not a good idea to do something like that. You know, just there's some places too, gas stations, they have signs, take your hoodie off before going in. Why? Because, you know, typically people want to hide their face from the cameras. So, you know, and that's another reason we talked about that this morning. You know, when we go out soul winning, especially anywhere we go soul winning, even around here where it's typically safer, it's okay. We should want to look like soul winners. We don't want to look like kidnappers. You know, we don't want to look like, you know, creeps and perverts, you know, looking to pick up kids somewhere. You know, that's not good. We got to watch out for that. Some of you might remember, I won't mention his name. He died a few years ago and is in heaven now. He came to church here. He was always giving the kids suckers. Okay? Now, those of you that knew him, I mean, probably one of the nicest, sweetest guys you've ever met. I don't know if anybody remember and know who I'm talking about. Okay. Now, I remember he came to church one time devastated. I would see him at Menards sometimes, and he would be carrying those suckers around, and he would give them to kids in Menards. He also worked at one of the restaurants, and he would give them to kids. He was just a nice guy. Just, you know, loved little kids, and never, ever, ever got any type of creepy vibe from him. But he came to church one time devastated because there was a Facebook post going around all over town that somebody made about him because he was also driving up places in his van, and when he would see kids, he would call them over to give them a sucker. Okay? Now, he was so innocent. You know, he was very old from another era. Now, you and I, we hear that, we're like, well, duh, you know, but that's not where his brain was. And I remember he was almost crying when he's telling me about that. He just kept telling me I would never do anything like that. And when he did, because somebody realized who it was, they told him about it. And as soon as he heard about it, he went straight to the police station and he told them, it's like, officers, I'm the guy that's doing that. I would never, and he felt terrible about it. And the police, I think they believed him and they were super nice to him. They just told him, it's like, yeah, just, never ask kids to come to your vehicle. And they said, in fact, never approach any kids unless their parents are with them. And, and he started practicing that, and he felt terrible about it. But, and I felt so bad for him because, obviously you can't get too mad at the mom that probably saw that and got freaked out because there's kidnappers out there. But then at the same time too, I felt bad for him because his mind never even went any place like that. And for him to think that people thought he was some kind of creep or pervert just devastated him. But let's just say that appeared evil. I mean, we've all seen the memes and things with the van, that says free candy on it. And he drove kind of a junky van around too. Wasn't white, but it's always the white van that everybody's talking about. But these days that we live in are evil. And so because of that, you really have to watch out for these things. Don't go, if you see a cop, don't just go take off running. And the Bible says the wicked flee when no man pursueth. It screams guilt. Is it illegal? Brother Jerry, is it illegal if you see a cop to just take off running? I mean, I guess it's not illegal, but if you're a cop, you're immediately thinking. And I remember seeing episodes like that on Cops where the cops just walk along, the camera's on, and they see some guys that look like gangbangers, and they just take off running. And sometimes the cops go chase them down, and they had drugs. It's like, you don't just go taking off running like that. It's foolish. We do that all the time when we're driving. If we see cops, I'll just yell, cops, just like we're guilty or something. And, it's But it does. It just, when you do something like that, you appear to be doing evil. And, many people think that somehow, that appearance just doesn't matter. And they'll even misuse scriptures to talk about how, God sees the heart. They'll go to that story in 1 Samuel 6, you don't have to turn there, or 16, where God tells Samuel, that, hey, man looketh on the outward, but God looketh on the heart. But man looketh on the outward, and we don't want to appear to be doing evil. Obviously, if you're not meaning to do evil, God sees your heart and he knows that, but man doesn't see that kind of thing. And so we got to watch out when it comes to certain things we do. Otherwise, we're going to, we don't need accusations. We don't need people getting the wrong idea. We don't want to offend people. The Bible says in Matthew 5:14, ye are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid. Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick, and it giveth light unto all that are in the house. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. It doesn't matter what your heart is. The world can't see your heart, and we're supposed to let our light be visible. And so if we're doing things that are causing it to be hid under a bushel, that's hiding who we truly are, that's not a good thing. Or if we're just doing things that we know could be perceived as bad, doing things that could look bad, that is a very foolish thing to do, and it's going against our purpose and what we're trying to do. So, what is the appearance of evil, and what can we do to protect ourselves as individuals and as a church? And I just want to talk about a few things about this tonight. Look what it says in Ephesians chapter 4 and verse 24. It says, in that ye put on the new man, which after God is created in righteousness and true holiness. Wherefore, putting away lying, speak every man truth with his neighbor, for we are members one of another. Be ye angry and sin not. Let not the sun go down upon your wrath, neither give place to the devil. Let him that stole steal no more, but rather let him labor, working with his hands the things which are good, that he may have to give to him that needeth. Let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearers. So notice all these things that we're supposed to be doing in an area. We're supposed to put on that new man. We understand we have a new man that's inside of us, one that we've been born of God. We have that spiritual man, but now we need to learn to walk in the Spirit, and every day we have to put on that new man. And in putting on that new man, it also requires putting off the old man, putting off the sin, putting off the filthy talking, putting off the bad behavior, putting away lying. These are the things that the world does. We can't do it. And so understand, we don't want to compromise with sin one bit. We can't compromise with this. If you sin in a particular area, people are more likely to think that you'll do it again. Okay? A great example right now. Okay? They find cocaine in the White House. And what does everybody automatically do? Who is everybody just automatically blaming when so far there's been no proof, no evidence, but yet, who do we all think it was? Good old Hunter Biden. Why? Because we know he's had a problem with that. And now supposedly he's gotten help and all these things and that, but at the same time, it's like, you find crack at the White House, he's the automatic suspect. I get a lot of people go through there, but at the same time, do you understand just how bad this is making him look? This is now getting everyone to talk about him again, talk about his past failure again. And so understand, when it comes to sin, anytime you go and you do these sins, it's going to make people be more suspicious of you. If there is something like that happens, people are going to be thinking about you. And so we don't want to do these things. We don't want to get nailed for these things. We don't want to ever do these things, because if we do, it's always going to get associated with us, because certain sins too, it's hardest to do them the first time. But it does. It gets easier to do these things the more you do them. And so we need to have a good testimony. We ought to have the same behavior everywhere we go. And anytime, It's been that way in the workplace. You've had people that were kind of known for violating certain rules. They've been busted for those things before. And anytime it turns out somebody did that again and nobody knows who did it, guess who everybody thinks did it? They always think, it was the one guy. I mean, I've heard it too, whenever there's been cases of, rape or molestations and things in certain areas, a lot of times the first people they're investigating are the registered sex offenders. And, and who wants all that scrutiny on them all the time? Who wants all those negative feelings on them all the time? Nobody wants that kind of thing. We talk a lot in here about how, back in the day, people used to be like really negative about perverts and stuff. And I remember listening on the radio. This wasn't that, this was maybe 20 years ago. Probably not even 20 years ago. I was listening to the radio and they were talking about sex offenders and just all the problems with them and stuff like that. And the guy on the radio, and he was kind of being funny, but everybody was just enjoying talking about it and agreeing thinking it'd be great. They said what they should do with all the registered sex offenders is they should put these put these shock collars and things on them. And anytime there's like any report of some kind of, rape or molestation or something, they just go and they push a button and it just zaps all of them so they fall down paralyzed again. And then that way they can go and check and see which ones are in that area because they're probably the more likely suspects. And so it's like it'd be bad for them because then those guys would be just getting zapped all the time. But, who cares? They're sexual predators. And it was just so funny listening to him talk about that. I've always remembered that. And I think about that every once in a while. It's like anytime something happens, if a kid comes up missing, zap all of the sex offenders. And, so they all pass out again, and then we go and check which ones are in that general area. And I think that's great. Okay, now that same guy would probably get canceled on the radio if he said something like that today. But wouldn't that would just be fantastic? And you say, well, that's not fair. Just because somebody did it once doesn't mean they'll do it again. But you know what? It will make everyone think you did it. And that's why we just got to watch out. You only have to do something one time to just kind of ruin your reputation in that area, to be the one that's automatically getting suspicion. And so for us as a church, there's just certain things we don't want being once named among us. As an individual, you just need to say, no, I just can never cross this line. I can never let this thing happen. I don't even want people thinking about me when this kind of thing comes up. I want to be the last person that somebody's thinking of. But if you go and you compromise one time and say, I'm just going to go try this once. I just want to experience this one time. I want to see what it's like. You know what? You're marking yourself. You're putting a stain on yourself, and you will be found out. Be sure your sin will find you out. It's always going to nail you. So just never do it. It's so liberating to not do these things. It's the devil that gets you to think that you have liberty doing whatever your flesh wants, but it's the other way around. Just sin always brings bondage. But another thing too, be aware. We need to be aware of just how evil it is out there. And that's one of the reasons too, that individual, wasn't freaked out at asking kids to come to his van to give them candy. And he was giving them candy. He was literally giving them free candy. But he obviously did not recognize the evil we are living in today. And, my dad, I remember when this happened with my dad. I've told this story before. When we had some vandalism going on at our church at the time. People were coming out there, breaking windows. They'd be leaving beer bottles and stuff out there. And so my dad wanted to catch them. And I remember we went and spent the night a couple times out at the church. We had a camera set up, and we were spying, just waiting, hoping to bust the people. But one day, nobody was out there, but one of the men from the church was coming home late from work, drove by the church, and saw a car out there. And so he went, and he, nobody had cell phones and stuff back then, but he drove to my dad's house, and it was pretty late, and told my dad, hey, somebody's out of the church. So my dad, in his pajamas and everything, just grabs his gun, and he hauls him to the church. They're going into the church, and the car was gone. Nobody was there. So my dad went to go check the camera, but he left so fast, he forgot his keys. And so he went and he decided he was going to try to get that camera. And so he was open the window, was only able to go part way up, and he was reaching in there trying to get the camera. And then all of a sudden, a cop pulls up. And my dad, all he's got is he's got a gun in his pants. And so So what he did, when he saw the cop, he took the gun out and he like threw it in the window on the couch there in his office. And then the cop came and was checking him, and my dad didn't have any ID on him or anything, and he's like hanging in a window. And the cops had been coming around there a lot because we had reported all the vandalism and stuff. And thankfully, the other guy had his ID and stuff on him and was able to convince the cop that my dad was the pastor of the church, and he let him go. But it looked really bad, didn't it? It looked really bad. And, you've got, they said that, being a cop, it would be pretty tough today. There's a lot of violence out there. There's a lot of shootings and all these kind of things. And again, if you ever run into a cop, while, he comes up on you and it's dark or something, don't reach in your pocket to grab something. We need to be aware of things that can happen. We need to be aware of how things look, because if we're not, we're going to end up getting ourselves in trouble. You might get shot. We need to be aware of how it looks when we're out soul winning too. Again, we should always be very careful approaching people, especially if it's young people, especially if it's children. You need to be aware of your surroundings. Hey, is this a good situation? There's just certain places you don't want to corner a young person. It helps too if you have kids with you. I'm always much more comfortable talking with kids if my kids are around or something like that. But even then, just, I can't possibly describe all the scenarios where it's okay and where it's not okay. But if you have a little bit of common sense, you'll know. When you knock on a door and a little kid comes to the door, I've heard people say this before. I don't think you're a pervert. I don't think you're trying to kidnap those kids. But don't say, "Are your parents home?" That just sounds bad. That's because isn't that what kidnappers are going to always asking? Are your parents home? So the way you have to ask is just say, "Hey, can I talk to your mom or dad?" And then and sometimes you have these kids answer the door and they're like, "They're not here." I get away from there as fast as I can when it's little kids, because it looks bad. It does. It looks really bad. And if it's and that's normally too why we like to be 2 by 2. It's that accountability. And so 2 by 2 has always been a thing, but I think especially today, if you can do that, it's important. And if you're not, if you are by yourself, sometimes I go solo. Don't go into the house. If a lady invites you in the house, don't do it. Stay outside. I've told we had a young lady came here one time wanting to talk to me that was really upset about something and started kind of acting crazy and everything. But I was here all by myself and she walked inside. And so I just said, "Hey, can we go talk outside?" And we went and just talked outside in the front. And especially since she was acting crazy, I want everything to be public. I didn't even want it to look bad, because I don't need any accusations. And I would never do anything. I wouldn't think about doing anything, but we live in evil days where bad things happen all the time, and we need to have some wisdom when it comes to these things, and we don't want to put ourselves in compromising situations. We looked at this verse this morning, but I want to bring it up again. Ephesians 5:15. "See then that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time, because the days are evil." And so you know what? Do everything you can to avoid being alone with the opposite sex. It's a dangerous thing. It's literally a dangerous thing, because there is such a thing as temptation. Ladies, there is such a thing as men who will take advantage of you. Men, even if you never do anything, there's women out there that will accuse you of things just to try to maybe get attention. And then as a pastor too, that people might want to make an accusation too to try to sue a church or something like that, because everybody thinks churches have all this money. But again, because of all of that stuff, you don't take a chance with these things. We've got to watch out for it. And so because of scandals in churches, I need to be more careful about appearances. Don't be alone with children that aren't your own. We got to watch out for that kind of thing. And I'm not saying too, there's never a situation. I remember my dad one time, he talked about, he had a strict rule about he wouldn't be alone with women. He wouldn't give women rides. There was sometimes ladies who would want rides to church or something like that. And if he would do it, he would always take some of his kids with him. But I do remember, there was one time where in a snowstorm, there was a lady in a ditch and he gave her a ride somewhere. It's like, obviously you can't just leave her in the ditch. The roads are bad and all that kind of thing. But even then, it was just get her to safety and get out of this as quick as you can. Sometimes you might find yourself in a situation where you have to do something up. If I see some kid wandering in the street about to get hit by cars or something, I'm gonna go pick the kid up. I'm gonna get him to safety and stuff like that. But either way, you just want to do whatever you can to make sure things don't look bad. And it's interesting how way back 2,000 years ago, Paul is writing about this. But I think even today, this is more of a danger. Because too, here's the other thing we've got to keep in mind. Everybody is carrying a camera today. And just understand, a video never gives full context of things. A picture doesn't give full context of things. But if a video just makes something appear to be a certain way, that becomes reality for a lot of people. And how many times have we seen that where in our own experience where there's been situations we knew of, people we knew of, but there's these clips that are out there that those clips by themselves look really bad. But, you happen to know the full story behind it, so you realize it's no big deal. And I get it. Some of these things are unavoidable. But a lot of these things are avoidable. Some of these things, the stuff people are doing, are pretty foolish. And we don't want to give people the wrong idea. So it's okay to make rules for yourself. And that's why we have some of these policies. People make fun of that too. They're actually critical about being alone with the opposite sex. Okay? Because there's business dinners and things people do. But you know what? Guys shouldn't go on a business dinner with another lady. I think it's okay if two guys do, but you don't do that. But I guess today's getting so freakish and weird that one of these days we're gonna say, man, we can't even do that. It's getting so weird today. Two guys are getting to the point where they're not even gonna want to go to Menards together. Without doing something to show their heterosexuality, because nobody wants to get accused of that. I remember when I was a kid, we were driving in a car and we were sitting in the back seat and I was on the edge, and so we're all kind of piled in there in that back seat, and my dad he's like, Tommy, duck down. And then that way it looked like from behind, you had these two guys sitting close to each other in the back seat, and they're like all freaking out and leaning away from each other because, back in my day, you didn't even want to look like a homo. But it was, it's all about appearance. And again, nobody's saying that you're sinning. If you end up doing something that appears evil, it's not, I don't believe you've sinned, but again, it's about abstaining. Okay, we should make every effort to stay away from anything that appears evil. And so turn over to Proverbs chapter 13 and verse 20. Proverbs chapter 13 and verse 20. It says, he that walketh with wise men shall be wise, but a companion of fools shall be destroyed. Who you hang out with tells people a lot about who you are. Wise people typically hang out with wise people. And even if you're not that wise, you can become wise by hanging out with wise people. You know why? Because people rub off on you. But a companion of fools shall be destroyed. You know why? Because bad things happen to foolish people. And if you're hanging around foolish people, it's going to rub off on you. People are going to think that you're one of them. And so we need to be very careful about even associating with those who are evil. There are some people that we should not want to be seen around. People that we should not want to keep company with. Psalms 1:1 says, blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. There are people out there that we need to try to separate ourselves from. And don't come to me with, oh, Jesus ate with publicans and sinners. Again, there's a difference between being in the presence of someone, even ministering to someone, and actively participating, with those who are doing wrong. Okay? For example, I don't think you should hang out in the bar. I really don't. Well, I'm not drinking. Well, why do you even want to look like you are. I mean, what is it going to make you all think about me if you see me walking to the bar in downtown? That's not going to be good. I just listened to a podcast by a guy who he was giving his testimony. He was raised by lesbians, or his mom was a lesbian. He grew up in a home of lesbian. And this guy, he was talking about basically just how gracious he is, and he's against gay marriage. He's against his mother's lifestyle that she is living because, gay marriage is sinful. But you know what? He has a great relationship with his mom and her wife or whatever. And he was talking about how once a month he takes his mom to the gay bar. And he's not there. I don't even think he said he doesn't drink, but he's there, talks with people, is kind to them, getting along, trying to be a testimony. I'm thinking, you weirdo. I mean, okay, first off, a bar. Okay, again, I'm against going to the bar. This was like a really liberal, group of Christians that think it's okay to drink. But they even claim to be against homosexuality, and you're taking your mom to a gay bar? That is the last place I want to be seen. I mean, he's not doing anything gay there. You don't need to be around that. You don't need to be in the presence of that. That makes absolutely no sense. What a horrible testimony. He was trying to act like he's a good Christian because of it. I was like, no, you're a terrible Christian. What an embarrassment. What a shame to do something like that. Doesn't make any sense. We do not want to do anything to associate ourselves with those who are doing evil. And you know what? If you get seen going into a gay bar and then a rumor goes around town that you're gay, don't get upset about it. People are probably going to think that about you. And you know what we're probably going to do? We're probably going to kick you out of the church. Because we're going to, I'm not gay. Why would you do that? Again, the days are evil. There's a lot of homos out there. There's a lot of child molesters out there. And if you're doing things that you shouldn't be doing, that you don't have to do, again, if it turns out you were going in there because you got a phone call that you had a family member in there and you were trying to get them out, or you found out somebody was in there dying, and why would you go in there to save their life? But, whatever, just, just understand, there's just some things that, you should never be around. And if you do, that's your own fault. That is your own fault. And if it ruins your reputation, you know what? I just have a tough time feeling sorry for you. You should have abstained. You should have abstained. There are things that are going to happen that are beyond our control that we can't help, but we should always be walking circumspectly. We should always be aware of the day and age we're living in and make sure that we do not do anything to hurt our reputation. And so, again, if you're associating with evil, if you're excusing evil, don't make excuses for those who do evil. When I hear people out there defending the perverts, defending the sodomites, I get a little suspicious about them. If you're one of these people who, have a soft spot and are going easy on minor attracted persons, I'm going to think some very, very negative things about you. Some of the worst things that you could think about somebody. If you're doing that, we shouldn't make excuse for those who do evil. And don't look like the crowd that's doing evil. Proverbs 7:10, and behold, there met him a woman with the attire of an harlot and subtle of heart. Didn't say she was a harlot, said she had the attire of a harlot. What did that say? How she dressed, it identified her with somebody. It identified her with the type of person. I told you about the women this morning that I saw in Chicago that, again, their attire identified them with something. It looked like they were probably doing something really evil. I don't know. Maybe they were on their way to the early shift at a local cafeteria or something, and they just happened to wear really short skirts. I mean, I don't know. But either way, I doubt it. I kind of doubt it. I can't believe you thought that about him. Well, if you're doing that kind of thing, I heard a story one time about a pastor's wife who had somebody come over. They came over for dinner, and she needed to pick something up at the store. It was kind of late at night, and she walked to the store, and a policeman stopped her because he thought she was a streetwalker. And now, say, well, how dare that policeman discriminate her? You know what? How dare she dress in a way that would make a police officer think she was a streetwalker? That just sounds so legalistic and judgmental. Listen, we all make judgments. We all make judgments. And if you think that police officer is terrible for that, then you know what? That lady that was terrible, that was accusing thinking that one individual was a pervert for going and giving kids candy from his van. Like, no, there's things that do look bad, and we ought to stay away from those things. 1 Timothy 2:9 says, in like manner also, that the women adorn themselves in modest apparel, with shamefacedness and sobriety, not with broidered hair or gold or pearls or costly array, but which becometh women professing godliness with good works. So what's it saying there? They ought to dress in a way, they ought to act in a way that becomes a woman that's professing godliness. If you claim to be a godly person, if you claim to be a Christian, you ought to look like one. When we go soul winning in Chicago, I don't want to look like a gangbanger. I don't want to look like a rival gang and then have somebody come shoot me. Just because you're wearing baggy pants and your ball cap a certain way or whatever doesn't mean you're a gangbanger. No, but it'll make people think I'm a gangbanger, and it could potentially get me shot. I don't know all the rules. Okay, I don't know all the gang rules and looks and all that kind of stuff, but I've heard stories before about people when they've been visiting different cities and stuff that they've had, the people they were with would get on them for how they were wearing their ball cap and stuff. They're like, that can get you shot out here. It's just how I'm wearing my hat. I'm not in a gang. Yeah, but it tells other people you are. And we need to be aware of those things. If we know something is communicating something to a people that's wrong, we ought to do what we can to try to fix that. Sometimes it could be innocence. But I've heard in some countries, if you wear your finger on your left finger, it means you're divorced. Well, I wouldn't want to be, and I remember my dad was there, and he said, so when he was out there, he wore it on his right hand. You don't want to communicate the wrong thing to people. You don't want people to get the wrong idea about stuff. We need to be aware of these things. And so there are some things that are wrong, and they've always been wrong from the beginning of time. But there are some things that are wrong because of the time that we live in and how they appear today. So there's some things that you used to see on TV that were kind of innocent then, but now not so much. Again, just things are just getting so creepy. Things are getting so bad, and it's really messed up. And I believe there are areas where churches need to be very careful in how they appear, because for example, immorality. A pastor needs to have a good report. I'm tired of hearing stories about pervert pastors. I'm tired of hearing that, and we got to watch out for that. People need to understand if we have certain rules. We had a lady, several years back that got mad because she was wanting to come here and do these cleaning projects at the church, but we had to tell her, you can't do it when I'm here. And I don't know if she thought that meant, I thought she'd do it, but no, it's like, no, it's for appearance sake. And, you ought to be okay with that. Why does that upset you? Something's wrong with you if that upsets you. As a leader, I said, my reputation is everything as a pastor. I need to protect myself in these areas. That's why we do things the way we do with finances, because that's another thing a lot of preachers get themselves in trouble with. And there have been a lot of bad guys. And so we just don't need accusations. We don't need people getting suspicious. It's too expensive. Because for one, if you all here are all suspicious of everything, you're going to be less likely to give. We don't need that. So there's nothing wrong with just being honest, open, transparent, letting people know what's going on, because we don't want things to even appear bad. That's another reason too. We don't do anything with cash here in the church. I'm telling you, we have never, ever as a church bought anything with cash that's come in these offering plates, just because of the fact that, if we start using cash for stuff, it's just too easy for shenanigans. We do everything with either checks or cards. something that has a paper trail. Why? Is it because, I'm afraid I might get dishonest? I don't think I ever would, but I don't want anybody to even think that way. I want to be able to easily prove somebody wrong. If some clown wants to come along and start accusing me of something, I want to easily be able to, in their face, prove them wrong, expose them as a liar, and get rid of them. Because the last thing I want is somebody just hanging around here accusing me of stuff. I don't need that. But if we're doing foolish things that look bad, you need to be the same way when it comes to where you work. Okay, we all have different situations, different scenarios. Always be aware of how things look. You don't want suspicion coming your way. You don't want people to get the wrong idea. Sometimes too, there might be things that you can never, you might not ever get over. And sometimes, again, there's things you can't help. For example, remember the story with Joseph when Potiphar's wife came after him. And Joseph did the right thing across the board. And again, I'm not throwing any guilt on Joseph, but even remember how when she grabbed him, he left the coat in her hand and took off running. And the fact that his coat was there, that was enough to make people suspicious. Remember in Esther chapter, go ahead and turn over to Esther. I wanted to show you this. Esther chapter 7, because this is just kind of one more thing too, that a way to look at things. So again, I've never done anything immoral. I've never been accused of anything immoral. But again, because independent fundamental Baptists are getting accused of this stuff all the time, people are mad at us already and are very suspicious. And so we got to watch out because we're under the microscope, because we have so many people that already hate us, they're going to always think the worst. Okay, just understand that. If something ever looks bad, people are going to think the worst about our church because they need us to be bad. And when people don't like you, they always think the worst. But I love this story. One of the just most satisfying stories in the Bible is in the story of Haman and just how he had all these plans against Mordecai and it all came back on him. It's just a satisfying, feel-good story. But I like this part. In Esther 7:7, it says, "And the king arising from the banquet of wine in his wrath went into the palace garden, and Haman stood up to the queen to make request for his life to Esther the queen, for he saw that there was evil determined against him by the king. Then the king returned out of the palace garden into the place of the banquet of wine, and Haman was fallen upon the bed whereon Esther was. Then said the king, will he force the queen also before me in the house? As the word went out of the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face." So notice he's there just begging Esther to basically save his life. But he ended up on her bed. And you know what? That looked really bad. And when the king saw that and he was already mad at Haman, you know what he did? He assumed the worst, that he was trying to rape his wife. And you know what? They immediately took him and they went and hung him. And so just understand, that was a bad situation. I heard a story one time. I think this was a camp meeting story, so it probably didn't happen, but it could have. It could have. But it was a pastor that was, he was out visiting or so when he went and visited somebody, and he went into the house when the lady was by herself, and he was praying with her, gave her the gospel, and she went to pray to get saved. And they went and they knelt by the couch, and this pastor just kind of had this habit of when he prayed with people, he kind of put his arm around them. And then apparently her husband came home and just thought the worst and went and attacked him. And so I don't know if that's just one of those camp meeting stories or if it really happened. But again, I mean, he's not trying to do anything perverted. But, that's just another reason, too. Guys, keep your hands off ladies. Okay? I don't think a pastor can ever pray with a woman, but, I'm not going to put my arm around you. Oh, I don't think there's anything sexual about that. It doesn't matter. There's too much creepy stuff out there, and creepy guys, except we don't need to go around putting our hands on people. It just looks bad. Okay, again, we've got a lot of little kids around here, and you got little kids and babies, there's nothing wrong with holding them and stuff like that, but you just don't want to be too handsy with other people's kids. Why? Because there's pervs out there. There's creeps out there. We should always be careful about that kind of stuff. Always be public about what we're doing, because we live in evil days. There's perverts all over the place. And I think every once in a while we need a reminder of that. And let me tell you something too. This is probably a whole nother subject, but I'm just going to throw this out there for closing. But young people especially, okay, in the internet world, there is a whole nother realm of things that you can get involved in that appear evil. You need to think about how your texts can appear, your messages can appear, pictures that you send can appear. It might not mean everything people accuse it of, but you just always need to ask yourself this question: what will this look like? Anything you send somebody, what will it look like if they take a screenshot of it and share it on social media without all the context of everything? You got to watch out for that. I had somebody a while back who had a problem with me. They didn't want to talk to me about it, and they said only text. And you know what? I immediately got really suspicious, because it's like, why are you telling me you only want me to text? Is it because you're looking for screenshots to share with your buddies that are also mad at me? That makes me very suspicious of you. And so, when I texted, I was very careful in my texting of them, because it was clear they were looking for something. People are always looking for something to expose you with. And you know what? That's a message I think we need to preach every once in a while. We got to do something, letting young people know the potential trouble you can get yourself online, how bad your reputation can be ruined. You don't want to have to overcome those things. It's just not worth it. So just a friendly reminder tonight about watching for these things. And I need everyone to, again, I hope everybody does it in their personal lives, but everyone here, when you're out soul winning, especially representing this church, think about what you do and what it looks like, because it reflects on us. And so with that, let's pray. Dear Lord, I pray that this message was a help to everybody. And Lord, just let it be a reminder to all of us. We need to be vigilant in these areas. We do live in wicked days. And so, Lord, we might have to make some adjustments every once in a while to how we do things, so we can make sure we have the right testimony. We don't ever want to send the wrong message. And so I pray you'll help us to be careful in that. In your name we pray. Amen.